Hello and welcome to another episode of the CHGO Fire Podcast, although I feel like the word welcome implies something positive, so I'm sorry that we do not have that for you today, but I do feel like this is an opportunity to gather as a community of people invested in the Chicago Fire and share in our pain as they find yet a new opportunity to disappoint us. It's also a great opportunity for us to chill together, which is why it's great that CHGO Fire is presented by Coors Light, the official domestic beer partner of Chicago Fire FC. Chicago, choose chill. Go to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer to get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. So, as I said on social media ahead of this one, it's just me today. You are stuck with just myself. I'm Alex Campbell. Thanks for joining me on this episode. We're going to quickly go through the last two games the Fire played. If you're tuning in and haven't been paying close attention, they have scored no goals since the last time we spoke. It is now 4 games without the Fire finding the back of the net. 0-0 draw with Atlanta at home. 1-0 loss to New England, the last place team in the Eastern Conference, the last 2 games. But then we're going to get to questions you sent in. Some of our diehards in the CHGO Lounge on the Discord sending in questions. Lots of you sending questions in via Twitter as well. So looking forward to getting to those. Also, of course, you can comment in the live chat as you're watching if you're watching on YouTube. And we will get to as many of those questions sent in live as we can. So quickly, I'll start by running through these 2 particularly terrible soccer games. Chicago Fire 0, Atlanta United 0. There was some good news ahead of this one. Andrew Gutman back in the lineup, but there were a whole bunch of other injuries. No Jordan Shaqiri, no Brian Gutierrez, among others. So Frank Klopas switched to a 4-4-2 formation through Mauricio Pineda in central midfield. That's how lacking midfielders the Fire were in this game, and Fabian Herbers found himself playing as an out-and-out winger. The Fire get one really good chance early. Georgios Koutsias getting that first start of the season for him. Hits the crossbar. Even if you're not going to score all of those, I think you've got to hit the target with that one. Then there's the story of this game, which we first really get in the 31st minute, which is Chris Brady. He makes a crazy good save to deny Sabalo Janica, who was simply left unmarked by Rafael Chihos and Pineda. Then Chris Mueller gets a great chance a few minutes later, kicks a field goal, although I think the Fire currently have their special teams kicking, the Bears have their kicking special teams between Torrey Taylor and Kairos Santos covered, so sorry, Chris, no work available there. Then nothing much happens in this game for a solid half hour. The one compliment you do have to give to the Fire in this game is after shipping 4 goals at home against RSL in the game before this one, you get a much higher powered Atlanta team who knocked the Fire around pretty well in Atlanta just a few weeks ago, and they end up holding them in this game to no goals. Thiago Almada does hit the crossbar in the 79th minute, and Brady makes another great save again a few minutes later. Then, as if this game wasn't just kind of ugly to watch in general as a soccer fan, whether you were rooting for the Fire, Atlanta, or were a neutral, we get a really ugly injury to Tobias Sahlquist in stoppage time, adding to the Fire's injury woes, whether it's something torn, whether it's a broken bone, whether it's, God forbid, both. That really did not look good. It looks like he's going to be out a long time. So our best to Tobias Sahlquist, and hopefully a full and quick recovery. Then in the last minute of the game, in stoppage time, a teenager on for Atlanta, Efrain Morales, misses a wide-open header. Full-time whistle goes. Again, not a good game, but 0-0 against Atlanta. The Fire, I guess, in the moment, I think a lot of people were okay taking that. I do want to talk for a minute more, though, about Chris Brady, who aided in this Fire escape, pun very much intended. And I think it's just worth saying that with the form he is personally in, despite the form the team is in, Chris Brady is easily playing just as good, if not better, than Gaga Slonina was when that transfer to Chelsea was agreed, albeit Chris did recently turn 20, which is still remarkably young for a goalkeeper with his level of experience, but is a bit older than Gaga was, so that does factor into the valuation. I'm of the opinion he should be starting for the United States in Paris at the Olympics this summer. That's going to be very contested, likely, between him and Patrick Schulte of the Columbus Crew, who does have the benefit of playing for a team that is currently playing not just much prettier soccer, but much better soccer, and having recently knocked out both Tigres and Monterrey, the two big clubs from Monterrey in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So I think Brady should be the guy in net, but I would not be mad or surprised as an American fan if it's Schulte instead. But I think you have to evaluate what Brady is doing in the context of the Fire struggles, which is, while it's going to be hard, I think, to get a valuation and to have a deal ever come in that's going to match the Gaga Slonina deal, which was $10 million up front with a potential $5 million in add-ons. I think that's going to be a tough number right now to get, again, because there are so few teams, Chelsea is one of them, as exemplified with the Gaga deal, that can justify and afford spending 8 figures on a young goalkeeper. But I do think Brady would be worth it. I think he's worth the investment for a club. And I really don't think there's a reason or an excuse for the Fire at this point to say no. If the right deal comes in and Brady wants to leave, I think you have to give him some leeway, especially if this season continues down this path and you're going to miss him for likely about a month at least due to the Olympics. Anyway, I still think a winter exit is more likely than a summer one, but I think if you're the Fire, you do have to listen to offers that come in, because at this point, he is playing well enough that if you replaced him with, a more average shot stopper, things would be worse than they are. The Fire would not have gotten a point against Atlanta. They might have lost by more than one in the game we're going to talk about quickly up next against the Revolution. He is right now the standout player for this team, and it feels like he deserves better, whether that's from his defense, from his teammates, or the opportunity to play for a better soccer team if the opportunity arises. Enough said about that Atlanta game, though, and anything about it. Not that this next one was any better. Chicago Fire 0, New England Revolution 1. More good news on the injury front ahead of this match, as Brian Gutierrez was back in the starting 11. Jordan Shaqiri was on the bench. Mauricio Pineda moved back to center back after the Salquist injury. Fabian Herber's back to center mid as Klopas stuck with the 4-4-2. I think it's worth pausing on this formational switch. Who does it help? Who does it hurt? Because for the first several games of the season, the Fire were playing out of that very, standard boilerplate 4-2-3-1 formation. Clearly that wasn't working, although you could argue whether the formation had really anything to do with the working or not. I think defensively, I like this better. It's particularly in the counter press. Koutsias as that second striker, he's going to run. He's going to run his ass off. He's going to try. He might hit the crossbar with a shot he gets from 5 yards out, which isn't ideal, but it certainly gives the Fire something without the ball that they haven't had, which far too often we've seen opposing teams, particularly opposing teams with defenders who can pass, they can just take all the time they want on the ball and pick the Fire apart through midfield. So the 4-4-2 shape with Koutsias rather than somebody like a Shaqiri or a Gutierrez being that support to Kuipers, I think that is a net positive in that way. The problem, though, is with the ball, because it really vacates that central attacking space where Shaqiri or Gutierrez or anybody who's creatively inclined is going to want to be. And what we've most often seen in these two games is the guy who fills that space is Ugo Kuipers. And that's not where you want your $15 million designated player striker being, dropping off and having to help build up play. Unless you're fielding Harry Kane out there who's going to do that and then also find ways to get on the end of things. Like, you're taking away Kuiper's best asset, which is his ability to be a fox in the box, to be a poacher. We did see Gutierrez in this game sometimes drift central, but then that would draw Alan Aragoni very high on the right, and you don't really want that either because his opposite fullback, Gutman, also wants to push high. So, again, I think there are some pluses, there are some minuses. And to be fair, the Fire actually have a pretty dominant opening 20 minutes in this game. They don't end up with anything to show for it, There's a few shots taken from the top of the 18 that sail high and or wide. Notably, none of those falling for Kuipers or Koutsias in those opportunities. So the inability to get those guys the ball in dangerous position continues. A guy who had a tough game, I know he's just working his way back from injury here, was Andrew Gutman, which also allows us to spotlight a young American player who, if you're not really a sicko or into the weeds on the youth national team scene, you might not be familiar with Esmir Baraktarevic, Bosnian American, who's playing on the right in this game for New England, and just had Gutman running in circles. And Esmir is a guy who's going to be a teammate of Brady and hopefully Brian Gutierrez in Paris this summer. He's a guy with a bright future. He's who New England's going to be building around likely for years to come. So a name to keep an eye on. And while not an easy name to pronounce, one that's very noticeable given how it fills up the entire back of any shirt he's wearing. Brady, again, made a couple big saves bailing the Fire out in this game. But the story, I think, of this loss, more than anything, and it's been the story of the Fire in a lot of ways, is that the opponent makes halftime adjustments and the Fire don't. So the Fire have that opening 20 minutes that they're very good. They don't score, but there's promising signs there. And then immediately out of halftime, it's all revs. They are on the front foot. They are pushing forward. They are creating chances. And the Fire just have nothing. So you can visualize the conversation that was being had by New England in the break as they tweak some things tactically, figure out ways that they want to create better chances, get Baraktarevic, get Carles Heel on the ball more, get their striker Vrioni into more dangerous positions. And I can't tell what the Fire were doing at halftime. Were there conversations? What adjustments were suggested? Are the adjustments not being suggested? Are they not being executed? It's we've seen this before, but in this game it was particularly noticeable that a team in the Revolution who cannot score goals. Like, if you think the Fire can't score goals, the Revs cannot score goals. And to watch them make adjustments that made them immediately dangerous with the ball, and the Fire just have no answers, there's a question we're going to get to later in the episode that very much shades on this topic, that if this is going to happen against the Revs, how are the Fire going to look better against anybody? As this half goes on, it goes from bad to worse. Rafa Schihos gets hurt, pulls up. He had played every minute this season. He's not been as good this season as he was last year, but he's a leader on this team. He's another body at center back. And so I think you're probably looking at a Carlos Terán, Mauricio Pineda center back pairing in St. Louis this weekend, which isn't the end of the world. I think the bigger concern is the complete lack of depth now you have in that position. Worth noting, and we'll do this throughout the show, comment in from Baloney Fonseca in the chat. The lack of creativity going forward from the Fire is shocking. Nobody wants to make a mistake, and it makes them all robotic. Yeah, I think that's a really good characterization. You see it in the frustration from Kuipers. I'll note it later in this game. He does get a singular one chance in this game, and he doesn't take it. But yeah, especially when, if Guti's not healthy or Shaqiri's not out there or neither of them are out there, there's just so little willingness to make that risky pass. And I think it's even more noticeable now that you've got Koutsias out there as well, because Koutsi's going to make the runs. Again, I think you can quibble with the quality of what he does, but he's going to run. He's going to make those runs. He's going to get in behind. He's going to be a general pest for the defense. But eventually, if the ball isn't coming, he's just not going to keep making those runs. And Callan Acosta's not going to play that pass. Fabian Herbers isn't going to play that pass. Chris Mueller's not going to play that pass. And Guti, we're seeing a lack of confidence that we've talked about on this show this season already. That's been a mixture of concerning and disappointing. Something that was happening before Schihos got hurt but got worse after is Fire players just backing off, whether it's Baraktarevic, Heel, Shankalai. These guys are just dribbling toward the top of the penalty area, and the Fire just back off, and eventually it's what gets them. Long ball played forward by the Revs. Gutman takes a horrible touch off his chest, but then rather than trying to either commit a tactical foul to prevent anything worse from happening or win it back, he just runs away. I'm not really sure what was going on there. And then Terán and Aragoni both defend very lazily, and Shankalai hits just an absolute banger into the top corner. Brady doesn't even move. He's got no chance. So it's 1-0 to the Revs. Fire then come close with a Shaqiri free kick after he subs on, and then Gutierrez looks to have a great chance, but There's a great tackle made by Nick Lima, the right back for the Revs. Those come about 5 minutes apart. And then, as I mentioned, Kuipers finally gets his chance in the 90th minute. It's a seeing eye, low cross. He gets his left foot to it, not his stronger foot, but he hits a pretty tame shot right at the keeper. Again, we've heard a lot from Frank Klopas this season that the Fire have to do better with their chances, and that's true. And Kuipers should do better with this one. But you cannot survive and get by on getting your star striker one chance a game. Yeah, it would be great here if Kuiper scores this 1-1, ugly point, you move on, whatever, but he doesn't. Also, this game should have been 2-0 because if the Fire are pushing for that equalizer, the Revs in the final minute, they get a 2-0 and they screw it up, which is a good reminder that this Revs team is bad. Like, they cannot finish off a 2-0 with no defenders because the pass was just played hilariously heavily. It's just a better team than the Revolution makes this 2 or 3-0 on the Fire. Couple other quick thoughts on this game. We did get the Omari Glasgow debut, which I think has been overdue. He's looked very good for Fire 2, not only this season, but was good for them last year. He is an important player for the Guyana national team, which, again, is not the highest bar in the world. Guyana, one of those countries that's on the northern coast of South America, but is very much culturally Caribbean, and so they play in CONCACAF, and so you'll see them playing in lower-level domestic, or I should say continental competition. So he's playing a big role for his country. He's a young guy who's taken on a lot of pressure. So definitely happy for him. Showed some nerves, to be sure. His first touches resulted in him dribbling the ball straight out of bounds and denying the Fire an offensive chance, but I don't think you can be too harsh on the kid for that. Worth noting again that Kuipers and Koutsias, both completely anonymous for the most part in this game. So, it doesn't matter in the attack if you add another striker, another guy who can score goals. If now you just have a second guy who isn't getting the ball, and, if 5 guys weren't able to feed a striker, turns out 4 guys can't feed 2. The Fire scored just 1 goal from open play in the month of April. That, of course, included that game against Atlanta. Can't say that May is off to a better start. Unless it's going to be Shaqiri with a magical free kick like we almost saw in this game, or Shaqiri from the penalty spot where he is, of course, excellent. He's automatic, as he said himself earlier this season from there. The Fire just don't have anything else. There is no clear, proven, paved ways for this team to create chances and to create goals. And echoing Baloney's comment earlier, the color commentator in this game who played for both the Fire and the Revs, among other teams in his career, was Jalil Anibaba. And at one point in the second half, he said, quote, "There just doesn't seem to be purpose to their buildup." And that is hitting the nail squarely and directly right on the head. So that's all I have to say about those 2 games. I don't think we want to think about them more. I don't think we want to talk about them more. We're on to St. Louis. Literally, the game is in St. Louis this weekend. And with that, it's I think worth taking a look at the Fire's upcoming schedule, because if you thought it was going to get easier, I'm afraid I have some bad news. So this weekend, they go to St. Louis. I know there's a bunch of Fire fans, I'm sure several people listening, who are making the trip to that game. So shout out to you guys. Safe travels. Enjoy it. That stadium's great. And there's plenty of good stuff going on the west side of St. Louis to support what's going on there in St. Louis. The team is not as good this year, so it's a chance maybe for the Fire to pick up points, but mostly just I hope everybody making the trip does so safely and enjoys it. And this is the start of 5 games in 15 days for the Fire. It's going to be a fire hose of soccer coming at them here, maybe at the worst time. Wednesday the 15th, midweek home game against Charlotte. Again, not killing it this year, but they're better than the Fire. Not saying much, but again, not going to be an easy match. Then there's the game at home against Columbus on May 18th. That is a particularly challenging matchup. Again, you're kind of just praying for CONCACAF Champions Cup fatigue or maybe a hangover, depending on how it goes. Then at DC on May 25th and home against Orlando on May 25th rounds out the schedule. if you're looking for points, it's going to be hard to find them. I think it's got to start, obviously, on the road in St. Louis this weekend, and hopefully there is something there that can be built on. But now, a word from the people who make this show possible. First, our presenting sponsor. That is, of course, Coors Light. Between work, social media, the choices life throws our way, your sports team, maybe particularly your soccer team, being real bad. Life throws a lot of things our way, but Coors Light celebrates the opportunity to rise above those things and choose a chill mindset. Maybe you can have a nice chill moment in the parking lot on the Waldron deck before or after a Fire game, no matter what's happening. You know, maybe it's talking to other fans who have gone through, whether it was the Atlanta game, whether it was the New England game, maybe it's our friends going to St. Louis this weekend. Maybe if the soccer's not the best, you can still choose an opportunity to chill and reach for a Coors Light and its mountain cold refreshment. It's certainly provided some relief, I know, for fans all season in Chicago. We are hitting the heat starting to get here this summer. I know in here in our CHGO studios and outdoors, whether you're at a baseball game or anything else going on across the city, there's going to be plenty of opportunities where you feel you need to chill out this summer. And just remember that when the mountains turn blue, Coors Light is as cold as the Rockies. It is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. When you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill and choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. That's CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. CHGO Fire is also brought to you by CD1 Price Cleaners, who are unlike anyone you've used before for your dry cleaning and laundry needs. Customers can save over 30% on their dry cleaning bill by switching to CD1 Price Cleaners. The price isn't the only benefit, of course. They pride themselves on their simple, transparent service. One low price, any garment, doesn't matter, makes it all easier if you choose to switch to CD1 Price Cleaners. And that even includes sports jerseys, whether it's, maybe you've been in the supporter section at a soccer game and some various water or other liquids have gotten spilled on your shirt. You can get that cleaned. They'll tackle hockey jerseys, basketball jerseys, whatever it might be, all for that same low price. You can also have your order ready the same or the next day. No need to wait 2, 3, 4, or even more days for your order to be ready. And CD1 Price Cleaners will send you text alerts when your order is ready for pickup. And they don't do just dry cleaning. They offer wash and fold laundry. They'll take your blankets, your comforters, your other bulky items. They'll do tailoring and alterations as well. They clean leather, even area rugs. Doesn't matter, big or small, CD1 Price is the place to go. So visit chgo.cd1.com. That is chgo.cdone.com. The link is in the YouTube description. And once there, you can pick from an in-store coupon or online pickup and delivery coupon options. Thank you to Coors Light, and thank you to CD1 Price Cleaners. All right, let's get into why we're here today, and that is questions from you, the audience, the listeners. My goodness, you had a lot of thoughts, although I think there was one person who said, I think I've thought of all the answers to the questions, but we do have some, and we're going to start with our friends who are on the Discord server in the CHGO Lounge. Remember, it's a perk of becoming a diehard member is access to the CHGO Lounge, where we have specific channels for every Chicago team and much, much more. We're going to start with a combo question here from Shy and from Peter, also known as Radio Maverick, on both Twitter and on the Discord. Shy asks, my question is, what will it take to fire Klopas? To which Peter says, I think a better question is, what will it take to fire sporting director Georg Heitz? I think we got to start here. We'll take these in order. I think currently right now it is more likely that Frank Klopas resigns than that he is fired from this job. Notably, today is the 1-year anniversary of Ezra Hendrickson losing his job as fire manager last season. Klopas' results have included a couple more draws, but to call that better, I think is, I don't think that's really necessary. It's about a wash. They've both won only 2 matches through this period of the year at this point. So again, all our best to Ezra, as, I think he still is a guy who should be working somewhere in the soccer world. So somebody in MLS should give him a call. Anyway, on Klopas, I think for him to get fired anytime soon, at least before like the summer transfer window opens in Europe in June, I think it would take just a precipitous drop further in results. Again, you could say what's worse than losing to the worst team in your conference. Getting blown out at home, I think, is the kind of thing. I think if you were going to see Klopas get dismissed, it would take, I don't know, if they don't get anything out of the next 2 and then the Crew absolutely light them up at Soldier Field in a couple weeks' time, I think that might do it. But otherwise, like I said, I think the much more likely scenario is, Frank cares deeply about this team. He's a legend of this team. And I think we've seen at times that he doesn't appear to be having very much fun. And I don't think you would think anybody would be. But again, I think this is not just a job to Frank Klopas. This is much more personal for him. So I think the odds of him being fired anytime soon are very low. I think at lowest, I think you see maybe a statement that says something along the lines of the fire and head coach Frank Klopas have mutually agreed to part ways in his current role. I think he's going to stay around the organization even if he's not the coach anymore. So I think, again, changing the manager could change something, but I think Klopas getting kicked out the door there's almost no chance of that. And for anything resembling it, it would take things to get even much, much worse, I think, than they are. As for what would it take to fire Georg Heitz? The short answer to that question is a very, very sizable contract buyout. Heitz, of course, agreed a new 3-year deal in the offseason. So if Heitz was to go, if Fire fans want him gone, it's going to take a lot of money from Joe Mansueto and quite the public admission from team leadership that they screwed up by signing Georg Heitz for 3 more years. So, yeah, I mean, what would it take to fire Heitz? I think at this point, I think Klopas would have to go before Heitz does, and I think the results would have to get even worse before that happens. So I don't know if at this point the decision to fire Heitz really has any relation to the product on the field. At this point, I think the soonest you would see it is in the offseason, which, yes, that does mean I believe that he's going to be given another transfer window this summer, for better or for worse. Again, I thought this last transfer window over the offseason was good. It has not helped things. So, yeah, I think that what would it take to fire Heitz, to Radio Maverick's question, is Joe Mansueto giving him an enormous bag of money to go away, which I don't see happening anytime soon. We do have one more Discord question I want to get to before we open it up to all the Twitter questions you sent in and everything that you might be saying in the chat. We'll get that. Yeah. Eric is in the chat. 3-year extension after what he did. Amazing. I'm going to slightly misquote a guy who covers a lot of soccer, American soccer in a lot of ways, Joe Lowry, who, among other things, he runs Backyeld, which some of you might be familiar with. They do great MLS, NWSL, USMNT, USWNT coverage. He's also a co-host on a podcast called The Total Soccer Show, which devoted an entire episode a couple weeks ago to how the heck are the Fire this bad. And Joe Lowry said something to the effect of the decision to re-sign and extend Georg Heitz is one of the most unbelievable things he can ever remember seeing a Major League Soccer team do. And if you're familiar with even the recent, if not long, history of this league, I don't think he's wrong, but it is saying something that decision has been kind of league-wide regarded as so perplexing. So let's get to the question here from Russian Coinage on the Discord. Why is this team so bad? Is it personnel? Is it more because the formations and the tactics are trash? Do they lack imagination and ability? Are the players stifled by their coaching? Yes, I think is the short answer to that question. Personnel-wise, at their best, this team they're not a championship contending roster. In a league, though, where 9 teams from each conference make the playoffs, I think they're good enough to make the playoffs roster. So I think there's some of it's, could the personnel be better? Yes, obviously I'm beating a dead horse of anybody, local or national, who's talked about this team this year to say they need creativity help. Shaqiri ain't it. Gutierrez has not been able to shoulder that burden alone. They need better creators. They've got some decent personnel elsewhere on the field, but I think there's questions to be asked. If the center back quality is enough, and now it's all injured. The fullbacks look okay. The defensive mids look okay. Kuiper should be good enough. Everything on paper says he should be, but he's got to get the ball more. So I think, could the personnel be better? Sure. Is it why this team is less than the sum of its parts? No, I don't think so. Is it more because of trash formation / buildup? Yeah, I've said on this show already this season, I think the tactics are basically non-existent. The switch from the 4-2-3-1 to the 4-4-2 is the most interesting tactical thing we've seen the Fire do this year. And when you just watch a team like even the Revs, there are points in this game where they're knocking the ball around in ways that are interesting. DC United scored a really beautiful team goal over the weekend, and they're not particularly good or interesting, but there's just even other not very good MLS teams show in moments the ability that they have a plan and that there's a construction and a method to the soccer they're playing. And you just don't see that with the Fire. Now, maybe is that because they don't have the personnel to execute what Klopas wants? Sure, but again, I have found the tactical side of things completely uninspiring this year. Do they lack imagination and ability? We talked about it earlier in this episode, and there's a lack of confidence, and I don't know how much you can blame the Fire players. Now, you can blame them for their individual performances, but as the losses and the lack of results and the malaise kind of piles up, I would definitely think there's a lack of imagination. Again, how much is it that they can't do it versus how much of it is they're unwilling to try to do it? I think only the players can answer that question. So I don't know what the answer is there, but you can certainly see it. Are they stifled by their coaching? I don't think stifled is the right word. Again, I think Klopas is a good energy guy. He's a good team belief guy. He's a good locker room guy. So I don't think this is not the case of they're having some tactical system imposed upon them that is stifling their individual abilities and creativities. This is not like a guy who maybe some Fire fans would like to see come coach of this team. This is not like a Jesse Marsh football problem where, you must play this way and players are playing poorly because they are square pegs being put in round holes. I don't think that's what's going on here at all. Thank you to our Discord users for their questions. Again, a reminder that if you become a diehard, you can get in on the conversations there. We have a good time. Appreciate those guys sending those questions in. But let's get to some of the questions from Twitter, and we're going to start with a familiar face who's already had a question on this podcast today via the comments. That's Peter. That's Mr. Baloney himself. Peter Fonseca, Mansueto, Heights, and Klopas. How do you fill your anger, blame pie chart? At this point, I think, we've kind of touched on this already. I think you've got to eventually, the buck has to stop somewhere. I've said it last episode. It is not Frank Klopas's fault that he was even considered for this job after it sounds like he didn't want it. It is not Georg Heitz's job that he was offered a bunch of money to live in a very nice city and do a ostensibly fun job of running a soccer team after even I thought we wouldn't be getting more Georg Heitz. I don't think he thought he would still have this job after how things went and his contract was up. So I think at this point you have to look to ownership and ask the question, at what point does the quality on the field being so consistently bad, at what point does it force more action? And I don't know what point that is. Again, firing Klopas would be emotionally challenging. Firing Heights is financially challenging at this point. I think it's in Mansueto's hands right now. Obviously, he's invested a ton of money, not only in buying the team and on players. Like, again, there's a willingness to spend here. Again, they spent $15 million on a striker this offseason. You look at the training center that's going to be open hopefully later this year. I think the plan is at least for the fields for the Fire to start using the facility sometime later this season, and then for the whole building to be operational no later than January 1, 2025. So there's investment there. there's lots of other things going on behind the scenes that Mansueto has been willing to spend a lot of money, and so it feels greedy to ask him to spend more of it to get out of the hole the Fire are in, but ultimately he is going to have to make the tough choices if things are going to turn around for the better, because I think we've seen enough of everyone below him, at least on the sporting side, to know that we can't expect improvement to come from there. Another repeat question, because these guys are everywhere, repeat question asker, I should say, from Peter, Mr. Radio Maverick. We have guys, we're big on Peters who like having fun social media nicknames on commenting on this podcast, so shout out to you guys. At this point, is it even realistic to hope that a change will come in upper management, or will this just be a coaching carousel? Yeah, I think, because if Klopas goes, your realistic options are probably either somebody like top assistant Paulo Nagamura coming in as an interim. I would have previously said that Jesse Marsh was on that list, and that I would have been excited to see that, even if I don't love the way Jesse coaches soccer. He does have a distinct identity and a tactical acumen that I think would be just interesting and different to see, but reports are that he is poised to replace Jurgen Klinsmann as the head coach of the South Korean national team, which, what a disaster that was. So if that's true, best of luck to Jesse in that role. Yeah, I don't think you'd see anything real revolutionary if Klopas goes out in terms of who comes in as an interim. I think you're going to see, we've seen very Heightsian left field hires in the form of guys like Vicky and, his right-hand man, Sebastian Pelzer. And then we've seen, let's bring in the top MLS assistant who's due for a job guy in Ezra Hendrickson. That didn't work. We've seen the feel-good hire now in Frank Klopas, and that hasn't worked. So, again, I think, could a different manager bring better results? Yes. Should you expect the quality of the hire to improve unless higher-up changes happen? No, I don't think you should. Next up from Foot is Life on Twitter. If the team keeps failing, there will be no new fans and people will become disillusioned. Given Chicago's high market opportunities, should someone consider bringing another MLS club to the city like they have in LA or New York? Pros and cons. On the short answer, should somebody consider doing that? No, they shouldn't, because again, not right now at least. You would need a soccer-specific stadium if you're going to expand here. There are so many soccer fans in this city, and I desperately want there to be a big soccer team on the men's side that succeeds here in Chicago. I don't think another MLS team is the way to do that, and frankly, I don't think MLS would allow another team to come here. We almost got a taste of this. Things that would have happened if COVID-19 had not been when it was. The group who owns the Cubs and now to an extent owns the Red Stars, Tom Ricketts, was preparing to build a soccer-specific stadium on Goose Island as part of the Lincoln Yards development. There was some local political pushing back and forth on that, but there was a chance that was going to happen, and that the path they were going to take was, let's put a USL championship team in Chicago and see what happens there. Maybe they would have then gotten in on this USLW League, this USL Super League women's idea that's coming through. So I think there is maybe an avenue for somebody else to get in the game. I just don't think MLS is the way that's likely going to happen. There's some great amateur and semi-pro soccer going on here in Chicago that's supported well, that people get really into, and that's great. But you could argue there's a gap in between. You've got a lot of what you would probably call fourth and fifth tier teams around here. And yeah, I think maybe there's a space for something smaller than MLS, but bigger than, amateur, semi-pro. I think there's a spot for that in the Chicago soccer universe as it was already, as it's currently constructed. Shy in the chat, though, makes a good point. People will get disillusioned. People are already disillusioned. And I give a lot of credit to the thousands of people who still go out to games. And I think it's a reminder to those in leadership positions of the Fire, there are people who care deeply about this team and want better for it. So yeah, the disillusionment part, I think that ship has sailed. And sadly, at this point, I think the only way out of it is probably just, frankly, not even winning soccer, just more interesting soccer. Score some goals. Lose 5-3. Do more of that. You're playing the worst team in the league, and you can't muster anything. There's nothing that's going to be sadder to the fan base than that. Two more before we get out of here. Next up from Kuiper's Hype Man, my condolences, sir, at Yogi Yap on Twitter. Are we going to even see signings in the summer window at this point, or is the season a total loss? This is actually a point where I think there's some hope, some positivity to be had. I do think the Fire are going to be players in the summer transfer market. Again, will the signings be good signings? No idea, but I think there are going to be big moves made. These proposed MLS roster rules that are expected to be official anytime now, and that should be ready for the summer transfer window, where you can have 3 senior DPs and have 3 under 22 players. That helps the Fire immediately. It opens up a DP spot. You will see Gaston Jimenez bought back down after being just shifted back up. He'll be bought back down to simply a TAM player. That spot will open, so there's a DP spot to be used for sure. You also have the future fate of Xherdan Shaqiri up in the air. He is in a contract year. He is going off to the Euros this summer with Switzerland. I think in a perfect world, maybe there's a transfer out opportunity there that he is able to join a team wherever he wants to go. Does he want to go home to Switzerland? Does he want to go elsewhere? Where does Xherdan Shaqiri want to be playing in 2025? And if the answer is, somewhere back east, back in Europe, I think maybe you look at options of, can he do some sort of pre-contract? Can he free transfer or transfer for some nominal fee officially in the summer, integrate his way into that new team over the fall, and hit the ground running next year? That would then open up a second DP spot. No, I expect though, the Fire are going to sign another DP this summer, and I think they're going to sign probably another DP attacker of some sort. Again, somebody to provide some creativity. So will that make things better? I know as much as you guys and as much as really anybody at this point, because again, we all, I think, felt pretty good that Ugo Kuipers, Kellen Acosta, Andrew Gutman, that these were moves that would make the Fire better, and somehow they haven't. So is the season a total loss? No, the season's never a total loss, because MLS is hilarious and that the Fire could be rock bottom of the league come, July, but then if they win 4 out of their next 5 after that, they're back in the playoff picture. So the season's never a total loss. I think that summer transfer window, though, is kind of the carrot we all have to have right now, because it's maybe where things can get more interesting yet again. And then our last mailbag question that was submitted on Twitter. This is from Jesus at Ramirez Jesus Com on Twitter. I chose the New England game to bring my friends to a match, thinking it was a layup of a dub. If we can't beat New England at Soldier Field, who can we beat? On Jesus, first of all, good for you for bringing new people out to a pro soccer game in Chicago. We love that. My condolences, my apologies that is the game your friends had to come and see. Who can the Fire beat? I don't know. St. Louis, honestly, maybe. This weekend in St. Louis is a winnable soccer game. Next Wednesday against Charlotte is a winnable soccer game. Let's just be honest. Next Saturday against Columbus, it's at home, but that is not a winnable soccer game unless something very weird happens. Again, unless the crew are all hungover as hell and play a bunch of children in that game. The Fire aren't going to win that game, and I think they should put their focus elsewhere. Anybody can beat anybody in this league. We've seen it, but no, who can the Fire beat? St. Louis, San Jose, Portland. I'm running out of teams pretty quickly here. No, there's lots of teams I think they are capable of beating. But I think we've circled around it this season, this episode, the comments. I think we're all kind of in agreement. It's mentality at this point. Until maybe more roster changes come in the summer, this is the squad the players are. This is the team we've got. The injuries suck, but everybody deals with injuries over the course of the season. You kind of got to rise above it. So I think the question, this is going to sound cliche, and I'm sorry for that, but who can they beat? The Fire have to start with being able to not beat themselves. That is step one. Can the Fire stop beating themselves? And only then, again, this is a very therapy answer, but this is, I alluded on Twitter that this is the Fire therapy couch today. There's sayings that you can't love others, you can't care for others adequately unless you can love and care for yourself. That's the Chicago Fire as a soccer team right now. They got to look inward first, get their own house in order, get that fire relit, and then figure out what comes from there. That's going to do it for this episode of CHGO Fire. We will be back in 2 weeks. That is a doubleheader day with the Red Stars, who shout out to the Chicago Red Stars, man, keeping Chicago soccer fans sane right now. They have 10 points through their first 4 away matches. It's the most in club history. They're, I believe, 5th in the table in the NWSL right now. And even in the games they don't win, there's some exciting stuff going on. I mean, Mallory Swanson by herself is excitement personified as a player. So I'm looking forward to that and some more podcasting to do 2 weeks from now. But for now, thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to Coors Light for being our presenting sponsor and helping us chill here at CHGO. I'm Alex Campbell. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time here on CHGO Fire.